Hello, today's video is about solving multi-step word problems. What I like to do is think of the word problem as a reading passage. So the first thing we'll do is actually mark up the text as you would a regular reading selection. Then you're going to use the strategy called sketch to stretch, where you're going to draw out a little mini picture that shows what the reading is telling you need to do so you can stretch your understanding. Then we'll make a mathematical plan, and then we'll actually solve it. So let's look at this question here. 5 kids went out together for Halloween. The data table below shows how much candy each kid collected. After putting all their candy together, they wanted to share it equally among all 5 of them. How much candy do they each get? And then over here is our data table. And we'll just scan through so we can see our information. Get a little closer so you can see it there. Take a minute. If you need to pause the video, that's fine. Write the data information down. Okay, so let's do our first thing here. We're going to mark up the text. And when I was in school, I remember that we were told to highlight the important information, and I felt like my paper just glowed afterwards. I would highlight everything because it was hard to figure out exactly what was important information and what was extra information. So we'll first look at what's telling us. 5 kids went out together for Halloween. So let's circle 5 kids. Okay, so we know we're dealing with 5 kids. Because later it said that they're going to share it equally. So we know 5 is important. We know our data table is important. So we're just going to put a little star next to each of these here. Okay, let's data table there. After putting all their candy together, so all their candy together, they wanted to share it equally. We'll circle share it equally among all 5 of them. And then our final question is, how much candy do they each get? All right. Now let's think, is there a hidden question? Before we can actually figure out how much candy do they each get, is there something else that we need to do first before we can actually solve that? And there is. What is our hidden question? Well, before we can figure out how much they each get, we need to figure out how much candy is there altogether. Or how much candy is there total that they are able to split. That's our hidden question. It doesn't specifically tell us that question, but we know we have to figure that out first before we can figure out how much they each get. Now let's sketch to stretch. And when we're doing this here, it is a quick sketch. It is not an artistic demonstration. It is just a quick little sketch to show us what this is telling us. And you're basically putting it into your brain a little bit more clearly. So we have Avery has her candy. She has 7.2 pounds of candy. Then we have Noah with his candy that he's throwing in, 8.4. Aiden, we'll give him a nose. He's throwing his candy in, 3.26 pounds. Pandora she's throwing her candy in, 8.03 pounds. And Braden, throwing his in, 9.16 pounds. And they're all throwing it into some big bucket. So we'll make a big bucket down here, little dots for candy. And then that's the candy. And then with this candy, they're going to split it among 5 of them. So I would just do a little arrow, split or divide into the 5 people. So it's a quick little sketch just to give us an idea of what we're doing. Now let's use our sketch to make a mathematical plan. The first thing we did, they threw it all into this big bucket. How do you mathematically figure out how much is in the bucket here? We have 5 people that threw it all in, and then we want to know the total amount. So we're going to add together all the candy amounts. So then we have the total amount of candy. The second thing we're going to do is, well, that was our hidden question. So now we can go to our true question. How much candy do they each get? So mathematically, how do we split this up into 5? Well, it kind of gave it away by saying split it up into 5. We divide by 5. So we divide that number up there by 5. And again, this is just a quick sketch, so we don't need to get into more detail than that. So now we have a plan. Great, let's do it. Let's go through our plan. And I'm going to turn to the other side so we have more space. So our first plan was to add them all together. So we had 7.2, 8.4. And I'm a big fan of adding just 2 numbers at a time. Keeps me organized and it's easier to see for me. And when I'm adding decimals that don't have the same amount of place value terms, I always like to add the extra 0 just so I can stay organized again. So 36.05, what? Let's give it a label. We know it's not the final answer yet, but let's give that bit of information a label. Total pounds of candy. Okay, and I'm going to circle it too because it needs to stand out a little bit. Now our second part of our plan was to divide that number by 5. Because we had 5 kids that were splitting the amount. All right, so the first thing I'll do is put that decimal, throw that up there because I know I want to keep it aligned correctly. So if I have 3 in the tens, which is really 30, divided by 5, doesn't know. And I like to do that extra step again because it makes me realize I dealt with it properly. How many groups of 5 are there in 36? 7, because 7 times 5 is 35. 1 left over, and I can regroup. Now I have 10, 2 groups. 2 times 5 is 10, and I'm kind of going quickly through the division because I know that you've worked with that already. 0. And I'm going to hold you responsible for knowing it. 5, and I want to make a group of 5. They each get 1. All right, so then I have an answer here, 7.21. What does that number represent? 7.21, or 21/100 pounds of candy for each kid. And that's my final answer, so I'm going to do more of a cloud bubble around it so it stands out. We know that's my final answer. Move a little star so we know. So again, these are the 4 steps. And the cool thing about these steps is that they'll work for any word problem that you'll come across. First thing is mark up the text. Circle the important numbers and make sure they're important to the word problem. Don't just go through and circle every number. Make sure they're important to that final question. And figure out if there's any kind of a hidden question that you need to figure out before you can figure out the question that you're being asked. Then sketch to stretch. Just a quick little mini picture to show what it's saying so you can get a better idea of when you need to make a plan, which is your third step. Make a mathematical plan of what you're going to do. And then the fourth thing is actually do it. And I didn't write it in here, but it kind of goes hand in hand. Solve it, and then you want to check for reasonable quality. So if we ended up with a number like 3,721 or even 721, we know that would make no sense at all because, well, we only had 36 something pounds to start with. How could each kid get 700 pounds? So take a minute after you actually do the math out to make sure it makes sense. This is a great strategy to use for any word problem and make it work for you.